Three, two, one. Here we go.
All right, man.
Hello.
With another expedition.
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 Those aren't words. You're making up words.
We're going to take an expedition into the world of mental health.
We need to take an expedition.
Therapy, right?
Yeah, I could go for an expedition.
How's that for a start, huh? To Through a Therapist's Eyes, the podcast. You are Craig Graves. I am Chris Gazdick. We do have a guest with us today. More on that in a little bit. We all invite you to see the world through the lens of a real mental health and substance abuse therapist, with the goal to create emotional growth through the medium of the podcast, being aware this is not the delivery of therapy services in any way. Special disclaimer today, we are not giving any medical advice today. Shall we highlight that one?
I think we always do, but yeah, we can emphasize that.
Feedback and discussion on throughatherapist's.com, the blog tab, or contact at throughatherapist's. This is the human emotional experience. Let's figure this thing out together. So, Craig, I got a good fun fact. We're gonna talk about nutrition today, man. Your turn, my turn.
I think it's yours.
Is it mine?
We got to do a better job of keeping up with
I have no idea. I think we never know. The audience now knows. We make it up as we go with that organization of whose turn is it? I'm just going to say, man, I had comfort food today from McDonald's. I was starving after work.
Comfort food? That's like your staple diet, isn't it?
No. You can't bust me on that, man. We covered that, and you gave me props not too long ago. You remember giving me props, right?
Well, one day is not a change.
No. This is every morning, brother.
Okay.
Every morning I'm doing my bullet, and we shared that. I'm hitting the vegetables, blend them up in there, and some yogurt and berries and bananas. And
that's good. That's good. So you fell off the wagon a little bit then.
Kale. I have kale in there.
You relapsed in psychological terms.
We had the French fries kick in. I don't even get French fries anymore.
Oh,
2 fish fillet sandwiches. Medium Diet Coke. I wish they had Pepsi. What's up, McDonald's people?
That makes me nauseous just hearing you talk about it.
It ain't that bad, man. It ain't that bad. So who do we got with us, Craig? We have a Miss Dana Fatic. Why don't you tell? How do we know this fine lady?
Dana Fatic. Dana Fatic is the wife of my good friend Jim Fatic. Jim and I went to Western Carolina University. We were fraternity brothers. Jim's a little bit older than I am, so I think as I was coming in, he was going out. But Jim's a good friend, has been for a long time. And Dana can probably tell you more about where Jim went after school. But he landed in Slidell, Louisiana.
Slidell.
With his bride, Dana, who's joining us on the show today. Welcome, Dana.
Hi, guys.
Nice to have you aboard. Welcome to Through a Therapist's Eyes, ma'am.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. You said you did personal training and stuff as well, I guess, right? So that's pretty cool.
Yes. Before my now 6-year-old, I was a personal trainer.
So what do you think about my dietary today?
I'm kind of with Craig. I'm a little bit nauseated by that, but two sandwiches. Come on, Chris.
Yeah, I did. I know, man. I faltered so bad today. I am so sorry, people. I even did French fries. I never do French fries. I don't do French fries anymore.
Oh, but I have to say, McDonald's French fries are a weakness. It's
the
hard.
mushy ones are the best.
Oh, they're crispy.
Oh, you do? I'm a mushy guy. I like the mushy ones. Which one are you? For mushy or crispy, man?
For fries?
Yeah.
Crispy.
Oh man, I'm weird, dude.
Yeah, I like crispy.
What can I say?
I don't think we needed the French fries to decide that, Kristen.
Yeah, I got a lot of weird. What can I say? Hey, listen. So let's let our audience know, kind of, just who you are, what you do, whatever you want to let people know, just to kind of get an idea of, you're kind of contrary to what Jim has said, I guess, a real normal person in a lot of regards, right? What can we know? What makes Dana Dana?
Let's see. I grew up here in Louisiana. We have 4 kids. We had them in waves. I've got 2 that are got one in college, in second year of college, one that's a senior in high school. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old. So we've got a busy house here. Yeah. Yeah, it's never dull and it's never quiet.
Yeah, so, I'm sure. I am sure with that.
But I love it. And so right now I'm just a stay-at-home mom, but I've had many hats. I was a personal trainer. Met Jim working at Disney World. And we moved here right before Katrina. So we've gone through Katrina together, and, and that's pretty much where we are.
That was a scary storm, to say the least.
Yes. Yeah, it was. But it was good in some ways. I mean, a lot of, it was bad, but good always comes out of bad.
It's an interesting thing about hurricanes. I like science and science channels and stuff. And one of the things that I picked up somewhere along the way that you guys might know a lot about, when a hurricane comes through, like it does do so much destruction, but as like with wildfires, I mean, it creates forests. So hurricanes come through and they wipe everything out, but then I don't know what the belly of the ocean. Yeah. What, you know anything about that?
No, I just know after Katrina there was a rebirth down here, and it's still happening. Thank goodness that's where Jim works and does disaster recovery. So we've been kind of it's a mixed bag, but we're making the best of it, and glad that it's far behind us.
Definitely super super hot down there. No, it fixes all the coral and kind of cleans everything out. I mean, it was really, I'm not doing it justice by any measure, but it was an awesome show that, talks about how, cool things come out of, negative events.
Yeah. Oh, Mother Nature's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and we'll talk about Mother Nature a bit, but yeah. Well, you got a thought, Craig?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if our listener doesn't remember which one Katrina was, that was the one that devastated New Orleans and that area down there in southern Louisiana.
Yes.
And I did, you hear about these catastrophes, and I think it was a big political thing with George Bush and all that stuff. And, and then other storms come along, other stories come along. But my understanding, Dame, you can speak to more of this, there's people still living under tarps who lost their homes in that storm. And how long ago was that?
That was in 2005. So we're coming up on 15 years ago.
Coming up on 15 years, and people are still recovering. Yeah.
We show people around in New Orleans of places that are still just devastated.
Yeah, it's amazing to me. And people are still reeling from that storm that long ago.
Right.
It is kind of sad. It's a sad reality. And thoughts and prayers to all the people that are still struggling from those and many other tragedies. And, we'll build this into our conversation, actually. I didn't plan that, but I'm glad that it came up because no, it's perfect because, we're going to talk about, so the audience knows and understands, anxiety and depression and the real reality of that. And you had said that you're willing to share about all of that. And in the context of, something so horrific, we could talk about trauma, which is a different conversation. We've talked about it on our show before, but daily living with anxiety and depression is real. And when you throw something on top of that, so you've got like double whammies in a lot of ways.
Right. Oh, absolutely. It really, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with this analogy, but I always equate it to Damocles' sword, where it's just a sword hanging over you. You're waiting for it to fall at any minute. And it's an imaginary sword. It obviously does not exist in real life, but that fear that it's at any minute something horrible can happen.
And it relates to anxiety, you mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Anxiety and mostly anxiety for that.
I love metaphors. I've never heard of Damocles' sword. Can you tell us what that is?
From my memory, and it's probably incorrect, but there is a story of a man who had a sword, Damocles, who was the name, Damocles, and he had a sword that was hanging over his bed on a very thin wire, and at any moment, this sword could fall on him and kill him in his sleep. And it just, imagine living with this sword hanging precariously over your head.
Wow.
So that's how I was. Yeah.
No, that's. I think that's
big
really.
Word of the day.
it's fantastic, and I think what one of the things I'd really like to accomplish today is helping people understand really and truly what it's like, because a lot of times with mental health, you hear these terms being thrown around, and everyone has ADD now. It's kind of a big joke, it's like, oh, I'm so anxious today, and Right.
Right.
Those are terms, and I'm glad we know them, but the terms really
They've been
indicate, like,
diluted, I think. I think they've
yeah,
been diluted over the past few years. They're thrown around and they've lost the weight of what they represent. To someone that's really suffering from depression or anxiety, it's not something that just goes away when you wake up in the morning. One day you're feeling sad. Oh, I'm depressed. It's not like that. It is at times crippling.
yeah.
And it can be a great interruption in your life. I mean, just a daily, something that normal, people don't think about. But when you're suffering from anxiety or depression, just going to the grocery store is a chore and a big accomplishment if you can do it.
So let's talk about that, the grocery store and storms and stuff, because we're going to talk about nutrition a little bit later. But again, in way of understanding that, I really do find that spouses even know you so well, but they just don't get it. Friends or family members, little kids. Dana, I work with children that are really dealing with this, and they just don't have a chance to give any verbal description or dialogue to help somebody understand the panic they're in and the pain they're driving through, So what do you mean? You just said go. That's important. You just said go to the grocery store. That's something we all do. I hate doing it.
Right.
But why would that be a deal?
There was. I'm going to back up. It's depression. It started for me. Depression started when I hit puberty. It's something that runs in my family. I can trace it back. My great aunt in the 30s and 40s had electroshock therapy. I mean, this is something in my family. And it tends to hit when you have some kind of hormonal change, menopause, puberty, even your premenstrual syndrome. It would affect me greatly. And my parents were divorced. My mother's side of the family wasn't the one that dealt with it. It was my dad's side. So my mom had no idea what this was. I didn't know because I'm, 14, 15 years old.
Right.
And all I know is I am unbelievably just this weight on me, and I can't control my emotions. And I think it was beyond your typical puberty symptoms, to the point where by the time I was 15, 16, I was thinking suicide. I mean, this was big, heavy. Yeah.
Right.
And I didn't know how to express that. And, this was in the late 80s. No one was talking about this. Mm-mm. And I was fortunate because I was able to find something that took me out of reality as I started doing theater. And I found a great group of friends that became a great support for me and got me through that initial, puberty influx of hormones. But I would still have to deal with it once a month to some extent. And then, by the time I got married, and I was on, birth control pills because we weren't ready to have kids. And I went into a tremendous depression where I, again, started contemplating suicide. And when you get to that point, you've got voices in your head pretty much telling you you're worth nothing. Why don't you have nothing to contribute? You are a burden to everybody. You will be a great, it would help them to be rid of you. You can see nothing good in yourself at all. And I remember the low point for me at that point when we had first gotten married was I remember thinking, I can just drive my car into a tree. And, that scared me. That was enough, where it was enough to shock me. And I started to research because I don't want to take medicine. I was going to a doctor that wanted to put me on medicine, and I saw what it did to my family. And they had some side effects that were potentially worse than having mental problems.
Yeah.
And so I realized that there was a correlation between the birth control pills and my depression. So I got off that, and I avoided anything with hormones, and that seemed to be doing good. until fast forward several years and to I think it was 2014, something like that, 2014, 15, Jim lost his job, and it was devastating. And that was just enough to send me back into a depression tailspin. Now, though, coupled with anxiety. And I did my best to kind of hold it together. But two things kind of made me realize how bad I was the death of Robin Williams, because now everybody's talking about it and I'm recognizing all this stuff that I'm feeling. And my son, on the way to school one day, my oldest son, turned to me and he said, "Mom, you're not going to hurt yourself today, are you?" And I just, like, those two things happened almost simultaneously. And it was a big wake-up call. And at that point, I was like, Jim, I have to do something. So I knew that exercise helped, so I started to exercise. And that, again, helped get over the hump, but it never went away. It was always there. Any little thing could send me, off the deep end. I say go to the grocery store. When Jim didn't have a job and money was really tight, there was, one time my credit card was declined at Walmart. And so that was that was horrible. So then from now, even, now every time I'm at Walmart, I have a little bit of that catch of, oh my gosh. And, I say a prayer, God, please let this credit card go through, even though I know that it will.
Yeah, it's almost like a little trauma response, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, it's something that I have learned to live with, and to kind of deal with, and to, I don't know, it's this.
Manage is the word I use a lot of times. Yeah.
Yes. That's the word I'm looking for, how to manage it. But it's always there, always. Until,
well, let's go there. Let's go there in a little bit. That's a perfect little teaser. I love it. What? Oh my gosh! Well, stay tuned, people. So it's interesting that you're talking, Dana. As you're talking, my brain was listening, and I'm hearing a description of something that honestly I'm a little bit weak on. I was so proud of myself that I was able to pull the words up, because I always have to pull my book down because it's a new thing that we're dealing with. More on that in just a second. Have you ever, if I might ask, been actually diagnosed per se, or how do you know what
I was? When Jim and I were first married, I did go to a psychiatrist, and I was clinically depressed.
Okay.
That says. But I have not gone back, because I'm determined to treat this myself. Like, I know.
Yeah, I get it.
Should, but I don't, because I don't want to be put on medication.
Right.
I just don't. And I was being pushed into it, and I learned how to manage it on my own. And so I did, though. In whatever 2014, I can't even remember what year it was. The most recent time, at the worst, I had looked at Jim and said, I think you might need to put me in a hospital. Like, it was bad. But then he was the one, he's like, look, let's start really hitting it hard, working out. I started training for a Spartan race.
Oh my gosh, you Spartan people, Craig. What is that?
I love it.
It's impressive.
I love it. I love it. I love it. When I was a trainer, that really helped me. And that's what I knew, that exercise was a great benefit for me. And it helped me to really control it and keep it, manageable. So, and I had gotten away from that. So he instantly went and signed, even though money was unbelievably tight, he went and signed me up at a gym, and I started going every day and pushing it hard, and it helped to get those endorphins back.
It is a big piece of what we deal with. And I mean, diagnosing is funny. And Craig, we probably really should figure out what shows we did on what and put those out with this show, because you really need to get some depth on anxiety. We did a whole show on, am I correct? And depression, we did a whole show on, right?
We did. Yeah. I'll figure that out.
Please do, because it'll be very helpful to to refer back to those, because there's so many things kind of moving around in what it is that you're describing, which is, I would really very much.
I'm going to go work with. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. Because we're going to pause. You got an editing job to do?
No.
Maybe not.
Sorry. It's the stupid robocalls for school.
Oh, yes, I know. I get thousands of them. It is terrible. But so what I was saying is, the listening public, to understand the complicated nature of diagnosis. Because there's anxiety and there's different types of anxiety. There's generalized anxiety, which is worry. There's panic attacks where you have, intense short bursts of anxiety. There's OCD, where you have obsessions in thought or compulsions in behavior. You have simple phobias, intense fear to specific things. You've got body dysmorphic disorder, where you kind of freak out about appearance or a particular body image. And so there's separation anxiety for little kids, where you freak out when loved ones, aren't around. That moves into teenage and sometimes even young adulthood, right? So this stuff is kind of really all morphing around, and it's hard but really important to know and understand what really is the demon that we're dealing with.
Right.
Depression is the same way, where you've got major depression episodes where you have periods of time for 3 to 6 weeks or sometimes longer where you're just in that hole. But depression can also look like dysthymia, where your mood is just sort of, way under where it should be, but it's normally in chronic. So there's really different things going on. Have I confused the picture enough? Because I got another one, right? Back to what my head was doing when you were talking is something called premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Oh, yes.
You ever hear PDD?
Yeah, I've heard, yes.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of PD?
Never have, no.
Yeah. It's something, and I'm going to admit.
PMS. Yeah.
What's that?
But it's worse than just regular PMS.
I gather. The way I've kind of conceptualized it, at least in my head, and I'm going to say I've never diagnosed this because I'm truly not comfortable with it yet. I think that I've talked to several ladies that kind of fit into that, but this is a brand new diagnosis in our field, and I haven't been to a training on it yet. Like, I'm dying to get to one, because I don't know that we get what's going on there with it. And we've talked about hormones on this program before and how dynamically unaware we are of what's going on with that. Yeah. And PDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, is essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, but like basically 2 or 3 weeks out of the month in that cycle process, the week before and the week after, like your emotions are all sort of out of whack, or at least 2 weeks out of the entire cycle, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I have a really incredible husband, I have to say, because he can track. I mean, he'll tell me, like, okay, Dana, you're 2 weeks out. And so he starts to, like, if I start having these like anger outbursts where I cannot control my anger, he'll look at me and it's like, it's just because it's that time. Like, he has, he can tell, and, because he's very smart and he can track things in his head. So it's just kind of funny. So yeah,
very helpful. Yeah, no, I mean that's interesting, and hormones are such the thing that we have. Literally, we talked about them with what was her name? Oh my gosh, I'm just blanking, Craig. Sensational Brain.
Oh, Gwen.
Yeah, it's wild.
I just talked to Gwen last week.
Yeah. We were talking about that, right? And just as a quick reminder, I mean, we have 100 of these things in our body, Craig. 100 hormones, of which we only named what was it? Because I forget numbers. Like 60 of them.
Yeah, I think 60.
Of which we only manipulate like 10 of them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what 140 of these things are named. Right. So that's crazy, and yet it's such a dynamically involved thing in the day-to-day experience of somebody living.
And what I think is amazing is that hormones will affect people differently. So it's not even a blanket, even once we figure things out, it's different things affect different people differently.
Right. Say that again.
I know. I don't think I can. But it is, one thing that'll, might affect me. Some food might affect me, but it doesn't affect Jim at all. And so I just think that's amazing how our bodies are so uniquely ours.
Right. Right. Depression, much the same way. I mean, do you have episodes that last like kind of how long?
Oh, goodness. They'll last a long time. I don't even know. I mean, sometimes they're as short as a couple of days. Other times they can be months.
Months, right. And, that's interesting to point out, Dana, I think a lot of times, people in my office, a lot of what I'm trying to do, which is very difficult because I'm not in anybody's experience, or I'm certainly not in anybody's head, contrary to what people might think. I'm not. But I'm really trying to figure out with them, because I find that people don't know.
Right.
They don't even know they're anxious.
Yeah, right. Because when you live with it, you don't know that there's something different.
Right.
You're so used to living a certain way that you don't know what it's like to not have it.
You don't know what it's like to not have it. Exactly. Yeah.
You said, how long have you been, like how long do you have episodes? I'm not sure, because typically it hasn't gone away. I mean, now I'm feeling much better. Now I can recognize, oh, wow, this is what it feels like to be normal.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Before it was always, it's like a low hum of a frequency that's always there. Sometimes it'll get louder, but it's always there.
When we were talking about this in the mountains,
yes,
right? That's where we met. And you were telling me about the itchy sweater. And again, I love metaphors, right? What's the itchy sweater?
Yes. I said it's kind of like having an itchy sweater on your brain. You'll wear it and you can kind of sort of forget something. When you wear something like that itchy sweater, it's just always, every little thing is affected by the fact that you have on this itchy sweater.
And then the irritability is there.
Yeah.
Frustration
Absolutely.
tolerance is lower.
Yes.
And the self-talk is just tore apart.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. It's an itchy. That's how I described it. Was an itchy sweater on the brain.
Yeah. It's perfect because, again, and then when you start thinking those negative thoughts and you start seeing the world all around you negative, you're like, well, it's a nice sunny day. There's something wrong with me.
Yes. Yeah. It's a downward spiral.
And you don't know what's wrong.
Nope. No. Yeah. There's nothing.
Something's off.
Yeah. It's not, someone will say, well, what's wrong? I don't know. I just can't get past whatever. Yeah.
Well, let me help you. How can I help you? Right?
Right.
You're like, I don't know.
Right, exactly.
I have no idea what it is. I don't know what you want. I don't know what I want. I don't know what's going on. It's, over months and months.
I always felt so sorry for Jim because, I'd say, well, I'm sorry that I strapped you to me. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of the healing that kind of goes on a lot of times in my office is that shame, needs to kind of come down, and the guilt that comes down, and the regrets and the resentments and all the things that have just built up completely inside is
right.
It gets rough, and we take some of those out of the picture a little bit. Craig, what are you hearing with this? And then we'll go on to what happened that she alluded to earlier. It was like, whoa.
But I do have some questions, I think.
Sure.
Not observations, but you said you wanted to do this without drugs.
Oh,
yes.
And I respect that because I'm a drugs as a last resort kind of guy myself, and we just did a show on schizophrenia, and John Nash Jr., he avoided drugs for his schizophrenia. What were the side effects that you had seen that made you want to take this route?
Well, I remember from my aunt, they were constantly having to adjust her medication because it was she was even more emotional, or it just seemed like it wasn't necessarily helping. It was just trading one emotion for another. And she was always constantly going back to the doctor to tweak it here and tweak it there. And I just thought, I don't want that just takes up way too much of my life to be sitting there trying to adjust this medication. Oh, and now it's my, now I'm in now it's my premenstrual time. So now I have to adjust it again because now I've got another influx of hormones. And so I just didn't want the trial and error. And plus it's all trial and error. I mean, I look at it as, next week they might come out with, oh, this drug causes cancer. And, it was constantly changing, or you'd go the opposite extreme where they're a zombie, and I just felt like there was something better than drugs. And
Right.
I'm like you, Craig, I'm a drug last resort. That's if I just can't do it without it.
Yeah,
And
that's
so-
kind of how I feel about that situation too. Chris and I go back and forth about that sometimes. The other question I had,
And just to say, Dana, what he means by that is the best tagline I come up with in my office with people, because this comes up all the time.
Oh, I'm sure.
Obviously, I really look at the medication points with particularly more depression than anxiety, because there's all these different diagnoses that are complicated and how medications kind of come into that. By the way, hormones, specifically, if we begin to understand that that's the major issue, medications, I don't know what medications you do with that. That's your whatever. But I've landed on the solid position that medications are a tool to help manage mental health, but they're not a solution.
Right. And but I think so many people, at least with my family, what I saw was they were using it as a crutch.
Yeah, it's an answer, and it's not an answer.
Right.
Yeah.
It was almost like, well, I don't have to do anything else. I'll just take this pill, and then I don't have to worry about it. Whereas I was trying to figure out, okay, what is the cause of this, and how can I change it? If at all possible, because I just don't want to pop pills for the rest of my life if I can avoid it.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right. The other thing I was curious about, I'm not sure if you can do this, but
yeah,
there's been a lot of research that I've seen lately about exercise helping. And you said it did help, but maybe didn't get you over the hump. I forget the phrase you used, but maybe if you could talk a little deeper about how exercise helped your situation.
Absolutely. Well, it's great because of that endorphin rush. And so it would just, when I was a trainer and I was working out for a couple hours a day, it really it was a good stress reliever. If I was feeling anxious, I can go run, and or lift more weights, or if it was really bad, decide, hey, get a client together, let's go and hit the punching bag. And it was a good
Heavy bag is the best
way to kind of release that kind of energy and pent up emotion that I was feeling. And I'd always heard that exercise was good for depression and anxiety to kind of help regulate. And I had told my dad one time, I said, exercise is the only thing that I know of, to help depression that has no negative side effects.
And that's really true, right? And particularly for depression, kind of what I find for anxiety, again, a little bit different, because depression, you're trying to, increase the serotonin levels, and that physical activity bumps that production in a different way than medications do and whatnot. Right. Particularly anxiety, though, it's a little bit more short term, right? It is. And again, the thing that I want to make the same comment about medicine is it's a tool. It's not a solution. I don't want somebody who doesn't have anxiety and depression out there listening to think, oh, well, you know what, if you just get off your lazy tail end off the couch and you feel better, right? No.
Right. No. Because a lot of times too, depression and anxiety, I know depression, it is a false voice in your head telling you nothing's going to work. And, it is a demotivator. It's hard. It is hard. If you're struggling with it, it's hard to get off the couch or to do any, it's hard. And some people physically can't. And they might not be able to run. Or
energy levels drop. Yes. Hopelessness increases.
Absolutely.
Helplessness increases.
Yep.
Feelings of sad, tearfulness. You your energy level plummets, your sex drive plummets, your focus ability to even think without a foggy brain is dead. Right?
Yes,
Is this
absolutely. It's like living in a well.
Yeah, another metaphor.
A well. Another metaphor. I'm a metaphor person.
And I love it. Craig, you got a question there? Or?
No, that was an interesting answer. Those were the two questions I had.
So let's move, because we're going to need to talk a little bit about food. Sure. What shocked me, right? When
me too.
Talking to you in the mountains, my brain just did a fizzle for a second when you told me what you're going to share with us.
Yeah. All right. So I'll give you some background. I had a child at 44. And you can imagine that the body did not recover as quickly as it did, even at 40. But
I think Craig and I totally understand that, right, Craig? When you had the baby, right? Your body struggles a little bit. You know what she's talking about?
Oh yeah,
yeah. We get it.
Most definitely.
Yeah. When I had my shock and my surprise and my shock children.
Just so the audience knows, I'm glad I'm a guy. That's all I can say. It's tough.
Yeah. So, here I was at 44, 45, 46, and it's not going away. The baby weight was not going away. And so one of my friends told me about this diet called the 17-day diet, which was just low carb, low fat. And so I tried it. This was last year at this time, and I lost like 20 pounds, and it was great. But one of the things I noticed was I was feeling better mentally. My anxiety was going away. I was noticing it wasn't nearly as bad it was what it was, and my depression was going away. And I almost felt normal. And so I said, hey, I think there's something to this with the carbs. So then the holidays come, and like everybody during the holidays, that's like carb fest. And then after that, we had king cake season because Mardi Gras time down here after Christmas, and I make king cakes, which, if you don't know what a king cake is, it's heaven on a plate. But it is basically a big giant cinnamon roll, and they're really, really, really good. And here I was making 3 or 4 of them a day for people. So I got off of my low carb and noticed that my anxiety and depression started to come back. And so I tried to get back on 17-day, but it was very restrictive. And I had heard about this diet called the ketogenic diet, which gave me more flexibility because it's high in fat, which was really hard to wrap my brain around, but it was extremely low carb. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try this diet because I've got to do something. The weight's starting to come back. And so I started. I started probably in the last part of May, and it takes about 10 to 14 days for your body to get into the ketosis state, where your body is starting to rely on ketones. Your liver produces ketones for energy now instead of using glucose. Well, I started to notice that I wasn't having that itchy sweater feeling on my brain. I started to wake up in the morning being excited about the day and happy. And I kind of, started to test it where you almost like, when you have here's another metaphor. You have a sore tooth and you keep poking it to see if it's still sore.
Yes.
Okay. Well, kind of was doing that with my head. Hey, here's a little anxious thought, and see if it would send me any. And I wasn't reacting.
Wow.
Anxiety was gone, and the depression, and it was just amazing. And I started to realize this must be what it feels like to not have this.
Holy cow!
It was. I told Jim, I was like, it's like I can hear birds singing, and it was just amazing. It was. Right. I assume it was the mental equivalent of putting on a pair of glasses after being blurry for a long time. I could see things clearly. I could feel things. I wasn't I wasn't going off the deep end with my anger. I didn't even know that I had a menstrual cycle coming. I had no idea. It just showed up one day. I was like, wow, there was no clue that it was coming.
Oh my gosh.
Because the emotion, that roller coaster and everything was not there. And I started doing some research, and now the keto diet has been around since the 1920s, I think it was. And it started, someone developed it to treat children that had epilepsy. So a brain disorder. And it was great success until they came up with drugs, which are easier to take than changing your entire way of eating. But there's something to it. People have been reporting a decrease in depression and anxiety. And so I don't think that they've done a ton of research on it.
No, right.
After they got out, when they started treating epilepsy with drugs, the keto diet kind of went by the wayside and was rediscovered in the late 80s, with this low carb craze with Atkins.
Right.
And so then it started to gain popularity again in people. So it's still kind of an unknown to the medical field. And it goes absolutely against what the American Heart Association, the diet says, where we have to have low fat and a lot of grains. And so I think it would kind of upset a lot of the apple cart, the diet industry, to have this, but it works.
And let me jump in and say very carefully and clearly, so people hear and understand. Like I know, Craig, the definition of an expert is knowing one more thing in the room than the other person.
The next
right?
guy, yep.
Right.
That's really the definition of an expert.
Yeah.
I think that's true. In a lot of regards.
I heard it's an X is someone former, and a spurt is a drip. So it's a former drip. That's what I had heard.
Yeah. I want people to know we are not medical people on this show. We are going to give an incomplete description. Absolutely. Really, probably thus to this point forward in this show, with our expert knowledge and medical knowledge. Please consult your doctor. Can I say that 3 times? Please consult your doctor, right? Because we're not doctors in that regard.
No, and there are a lot of people who should not try this.
Right.
The closest thing that I have to any kind of degree was a correspondence course to become a personal trainer. Like I'm not at all in any way qualified to recommend somebody go, not on my recommendation anyway.
Let me slice through what I saw, and this is a link that we have. It's just the WebMD, and Dana, you totally nailed it for to a large part. I think what they covered, but ketogenic is a term for the Atkins, like you said, low carb diet. The idea is to get more calories from protein and fat and less of the carbs. So you cut back most on the carbs, which are easy to digest, and sugars and stuff that are pastries, like you said. Those toasteries sounded awesome. What you cook? I need to have one of those.
I will send y'all a king cake.
I need to have a king cake. So then you do this, and you move into ketosis, and
ketosis.
That's done by eating less than 50 grams of carbs a day for typically 3 to 4 days, and then you break down the proteins and fat. You said it took a little longer for you. So every body is really, really, really different, I think.
Right.
They pointed out that it's intended to be a short-term diet that focuses on weight loss rather than the pursuit of health benefits. But the benefits, but the benefits, they talked a little bit about epilepsy and heart disease and certain brain diseases and even acne. But every qualification they put on here is it needs more research,
Right.
I didn't know that insulin is a hormone. Did you know that?
Yeah. I did know that.
I did not realize that's one of the 60 that we've named, right?
Yeah.
So your body needs less, which means it makes less, thus to help protect against some kind of cancers. Again, needs more research, they say.
Right.
Side effects, the constipation, low blood sugar, indigestion. Much less often, though, low-carb diets can lead to kidney stones and high levels of acid in your body, acidosis. Also, the keto flu, which I've heard people talk about, right?
Right.
Includes headaches and weakness and irritability, bad breath and fatigue. that's the long and short of it in what I think the basics are that we can cover. But, sort of thinking this from sort of outside the box, I mean, it really does seem like there's a lot of really dynamic things going on inside our hypothalamus with our emotion systems that all correlate together with all the things that hormones are a part of with, probably skin tone, voice tone, hair. I mean, is there anything that it doesn't really impact,
Right. I think what we put in our mouth, I mean, it's kind of, we would never put sugar into our car and expect it to run. Why, or any kind of, other than gas, that's what our cars are. Our body is the same way. We need to be very careful what we put into our body. And, and now when I say, because there are people that think the keto diet is a free ticket to go and gorge on all the bacon you can eat. But that's
sounds
not
awesome.
the case. I know.
That's what I'd do.
Yeah.
But when I say 80% of your calories should come from fat, but not unhealthy fat. Avocados, salmon, your healthy fats that you would find in walnuts or almonds. And you don't have to have 80% fat. But just the main focus is to keep those carbs low.
How many carbs a day do you eat on the keto diet, Dana? Do you track it?
I do. On a good day, I'll track it. Sometimes life gets in the way, but I try to, my goal is between 20 and 30.
Wow.
Yeah. And when you think about, for example, 3 Oreos is 24 grams of carbs.
Wow.
So
See, this is where my head explodes and I just tune out. I got to be honest with you. I can't what is all that?
So do you eat Oreos occasionally? I mean, what kind of foods do you eat? What do you stay away from? Talk to us about that.
Sure. Well, I try to stay away from all processed foods.
Okay.
Because there's just hidden, even things that say they're keto friendly, I find that there is hidden ingredients. It's just chemicals.
Yeah.
So I try to, the old adage, you stay on the outside of the grocery store.
Right. On the outskirts. Yeah.
Right.
Everything in the middle's bad.
Right. But I eggs, I eggs, clean protein. So fish and, meat, chicken, a lot of vegetables. I mean, not tons. I say a lot, but leafy green vegetables, because those are low in carbs, because you can get a lot of carbs from vegetables, believe it or not. Very few fruits.
Now, is that the difference in like keto versus paleo? Because I believe vegetables are paleo, or does paleo require you to limit carbs too?
It is a lower carbs, but they have some grain with paleo.
Oh, okay.
I know paleo, you don't have dairy in paleo.
But you do in keto, right?
We do.
Okay.
Yep. So you can have butter, cheese. Milk is really high in carbs, which I was surprised. But
and I think I want to jump in and just really refer people not to this show, but to an authority with particularly your doctor on it, because I want to get back and focus a little bit on what your experience is on that, because it's dynamic to me. But
let's wait a minute.
Okay.
Before you jump away from that completely. Obviously, you want to talk to your doctor before starting any diet, but a doctor may not be as versed on this as.
It may not.
No, that's true.
Yeah, I would recommend. There's a guy named Mark Sisson, marksdailyapple.com, that I've heard talk about this, who I think is an expert. There's also a guy named Rob Wolf, robwolf.com, who's also an expert on paleo.
You are loading yourself up with show notes, buddy.
Ben Greenfield talks a lot about this kind of diet. Mark Devine, who we talked about on the show, talks about paleo/keto diets.
There's also, if you're on Reddit, there are several subreddits about keto. There's the keto science, subreddit keto diet. There's all kinds. So if you just do a search.
Yeah, so talk to your doctor, but he may say, "Oh no, standard American diet, man."
Yeah,
Right.
I'm glad
go get a bowl of ice cream and a soda and have at it.
I'm glad you call that out because it is so frustrating. I bet you're absolutely dead on. Doctors don't necessarily know. I was just going to read this part. I wasn't going totally away from this because some of this is I mean, the details are really important. I got another article from wherever this is. It was a science article. It was way above my head, frankly, but they were talking about just so many of the dynamic aspects of each one of these things, related to carbohydrates and the proteins and essential fatty acids. And then they went into vitamins and they talked about the B complex vitamins and vitamin B12. I can't even pronounce half this stuff, right? Cyanobalamin, folate. And then they talked about minerals, calcium and chromium, iodine, iron. Listen, there's lithium. They had a little section talking about, I didn't know lithium is even a mineral. We have lithium salt medications for bipolar, but we have lithium in our food? Like, what? Right? But listen to what they said about carbohydrates. I just thought it was interesting just to give you an idea of the dynamic nature of what we're dealing with here.
Who are you quoting here?
This is the article from, I don't know, NEMA, NCBI, whatever that is. It's a science article, man. It's on show notes. I couldn't read it because it was way above my head.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Carbohydrates are naturally occurring polysaccharides and play an important role in the structure and function of an organism. In higher organisms, human, they have been found to affect mood and behavior. Eating a meal, which is rich in carbohydrates, triggers the release of insulin in the body. Insulin helps let the blood sugar into cells where it can be used for energy. And simultaneously, it triggers the entry of tryptophan to the brain. Tryptophan in the brain affects the neurotransmitters levels. Consumption of diets of low in carbohydrates tends to precipitate depression, since the production of brain chemicals serotonin and tryptophan to promote the feeling of well-being is triggered by carbohydrate-rich foods. It is suggested that low glycemic index foods, such as some fruits and vegetables, whole grains, pastas, etc., are more likely to provide a moderate but lasting effect on brain chemistry, mood, and energy level than the high GI foods, primarily sweets, that tend to prove immediate but temporary relief. I wanted to read that for a couple of reasons, just because, one, I know carbs are a big part of that. Right. But two, I just got asked the question. I don't know if I understood everything I read, and I couldn't read that whole article with all that they were talking about. I would have to read it so slowly. Right. How many people, because we get so many contradictory reports, really understand these dynamic interactions between not only hormones, but hormones, and then minerals, and then vitamins, and then, I mean, it blows my head away. It really, really does.
Well, I saw recently a study, and I wish I would have printed it out, but the gist of it was that they think a keto diet can help people with Alzheimer's. They're doing a study right now on that they've had.
I think I saw that.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
I just think it's amazing. I think we just don't know enough about the brain. We're learning a lot about the brain.
Well, I think there's a theory that Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes.
Really?
Yeah, that insulin, somehow the production of insulin or spikes in insulin is what ultimately damages the brain somehow. And again, you have to go look that up. But I have heard Alzheimer's disease called type 3 diabetes.
That's
so it would make sense, right? If a keto diet low in carbs would help that.
And I think that when you increase the good fatty acid, the good fat, our brain is fat.
It is, yes.
It is.
So if you're giving your body more of the good fat, then could it repair itself? I don't know. I find it fascinating.
Well, we know the brain repairs itself, right?
Right.
It's what's it called? Neuroplasticity.
Exactly.
So I would imagine, like anything else, the brain needs food, and that would be it, right?
Right. And if we give it bad fat, and it tries to repair itself with bad fat, what's it going to do? I mean, it could. I just find it fascinating to kind of think about all of this, how food interacts with our bodies.
It is terribly fascinating. And I need to correct myself. I realized I misspoke a little bit ago when I quoted those numbers. It's neurotransmitters. We know of 200 of them, and we've only named 60, and we only interact with them. But you know what, Dana, I don't think I've talked to you about this. You know what I heard in a conference that blew me away about hormones?
What's that?
We have, I want to say hundreds of different hormones, it might be thousands, and then hundreds of subsets of each hormone. Now, when this neurologist said that to me, it just blew me away. I'm like, hundreds of subsets interacting with hundreds of subsets of each hormone are in our body. Come on.
Right.
That's
right.
Dynamic.
I think as much as we know about the human body, we really don't know anything about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had a youth one time tell me, it's like, well, we know everything about the brain. I'm like, no, we don't. We know
we don't
nothing.
know. Yeah, we know hardly anything about it.
Right.
So what has been your then, getting back to your experience, are you still doing the keto?
I am. I kind of got off of it a little bit when we went to that pancake breakfast, I have to say.
Oh, we had a pancake breakfast in the mountains. That was great.
Yeah.
It was. It was good.
Sorry to influence you.
Hey, Dana, I've been making pancakes with almond flour. They're supposed to be low carb.
Hey, I have a great one that uses just eggs, believe it or
Really?
not.
You have to send that to me.
I will.
And I think with that said, people are probably thinking, God, these guys are eating horrible foods. But you can
no, it's delicious.
Really good foods, right? You really eat good food. You just have to be
right, creative. They've got amazing cooks out there who have created fantastic recipes that way more creative than I could ever be.
Have you got a bread recipe?
I do.
So I looked one up. I haven't made it yet, but I looked one up the other day. So I'm going to try that out. I'll let you know how it goes.
I think I've created a keto king cake.
Oh, sweet.
Wow.
We're coming down there next time you make those.
You got it.
I might want the one with butter in it. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, it is. It's going to have butter.
Okay, good.
Just so you and our audience knows, I'm not like strictly keto, but I'm kind of like paleo keto. And I've been doing a journal called the 6 Pillar Journal. I'll talk more about that on a different show, where you track six pillars, one of those being food. And man, I realized the other day I'd gone for like a week, and I think the only carbs I had during that whole week was one banana every day that I put in my smoothie. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm not like strict keto or strict paleo.
Right.
I kind of go in between, and sometimes I'll cheat and have a plate of nachos, but.
Well, even what I found really interesting was even going off of keto for that week we were in the mountains and visiting, that my mood still was even. Like I didn't have the spikes. Now, when I got back, I didn't go on I didn't get back into keto right away. And eventually I could feel the anxiety starting to come back. But it wasn't an immediate thing because I guess, I don't know why. I don't know, but it helped. So I am now back on it and feeling better again.
Really?
Awesome.
So say more about that. Feeling better again, back on it for how long? What do you mean? Like how many weeks or days do you think?
Yeah, I'm back doing keto because we got back from our vacation at the beginning of August, beginning of this month. And so there were a couple of days where I still was, it's hard when you're addicted to, because I'm a bread girl. I'm French. We like our French bread and we like our pastries. French and German. So I've got it on both ends.
Wow.
But so it's hard, and I had kind of let myself cheat, and then that turned into a whole day of, so I've gotten back into it the last 2 weeks, and it's gotten, back to being even keeled and feeling better.
Is it possible to kind of say, everything in moderation occurs to my brain. And when I'm looking at, from a mental health perspective, we want to be aware. We don't want to be obsessive or, scared about things. It's trying to make better choices. I feel like is that something to to focus on, rather than, oh my God, I either got to go way into this and I can't ever do it, or let's give a little bit of hope about maybe kind of not bailing out and just putting a toe in the water and being good enough with that, but just how can we move realistically with this with some that aren't going to go all in?
Yeah, well, I think just cutting back on carbs, maybe instead of white rice, have riced cauliflower, or maybe instead of a sandwich with bread, how about wrap it in lettuce? Just making some smart choices and cutting the carbs, cut out the processed foods, because that's just bad anyway. It's just not good.
Yeah, I've never been a big conspiracy thinking, but I mean, I hang out with this guy to my left here. I got a buddy. Love you, Joe, man. He kind of talks in my ear, and it's like, and I'm always kind of like, I totally get it. But I'm getting, honestly, like, dude, I'm getting it more. But I don't think we need to go overboard. But the chemical dynamic changes since we've made a refrigerator. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Prior to that, I mean, it makes total sense to me that the outside of the grocery store is where you need to be. Right. That's I can hang with that. Right. Yeah. Right. And I think that those changes that we've brought on with technology, they're big changes, maybe. Right. Well, go ahead, Craig.
I was just going to say, whether you believe in creation or evolution, whether it was the creator or the universe or whatever you want to call it, the earth gives us food to eat, right?
Yes.
And so when you start monkeying with that stuff, in the lab, it's just not, it changes things.
Right. It does.
We don't know that's the scary thing about GMOs, is we have no idea what the ramifications of GMOs are, because we're the experiment.
GMOs are
genetically modified organisms.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. GMOs.
Yeah, so all of our food now is GMO, and we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. And it could be some of the craziness that's going on in the world now could be a result of some of that stuff. Who knows?
Right.
I want to talk to the guy who puts 10 nanograms of selenium into a chromium container and talks about adding a little bit of iodine and iron and maybe a little bit of ethanol and to produce our food in a box. Now, I just made all that up.
Right.
But really, is that what people have figured out? Like, we could preserve this wheat product and put like whatever the hell together in that and sell it. They'll buy it.
Right. Yeah, well, if you want to make it taste good, add a bunch of sugar to it.
All kinds of sugar, I'm sure. Syrup, starch, and I don't know. It is. You start. I really do. I get fearful of that a little bit. I get a little bit scared thinking, when we have genetically modified stuff that we eat to like a high percentage of like 80 or 90%. That really is kind of scary, man.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I mean, if you look at the labels on a lot of foods, I mean, we eat so much grain, so much wheat, so much sugar. I heard a statistic that at the turn of the century, back in the 1900s, I think the average American ate 5 pounds of sugar per year, and now it's like 150 pounds.
Yeah. And a lot of it's hidden. You don't know you're getting it.
Right. Even if you read the label, yeah.
Right. I mean, they like to hide it under all these different names, but it's sugar, and even healthy food. And the biggest I think, worst thing is the low fat. Because if you take out the fat, guess what they're putting in? Sugar.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would challenge our audience across the nation and in the world and other countries, please, if you have somebody who's really could be considered a high level expert or whatnot in this, I would love to talk to him and invite him on the show. But I want to make the point, we've qualified ourselves as not medical doctors and not, knowledgeable about all this. So who really is, I wonder. And I'm okay. We talked about this carefully, Dana, before we did this show, didn't we? Because I'm okay with us having a conversation, because that's what this is a conversation based on, albeit one very amazing woman, but one person, right?
I can only speak on what worked for me.
Because that was dynamic.
Yeah. One of the things I've noticed during this conversation is you seem to be very aware of what's going on inside of your body. And it sounds like you have been for a long time. Yeah. So this is this thing is a great example of somebody who has noticed the difference by changing their diet. It's a personal story.
Yeah.
You know, and it may or may not work for somebody else. But if somebody wanted to give this thing a shot, Dana, somebody's suffering like you were and said, hey, I'm hearing Dana on this podcast, and I think I'm going to give keto a try. What would you say? What would you recommend for them to do to get started?
Do your research. There is so many resources out there on the internet. I really have enjoyed on Reddit the subreddit the Keto Diet. That's what it's called on Reddit. They've got a great beginners frequently asked questions section, and it's a great community support also of a bunch of people that have been on it. Some they're just starting, others have been on it for years, and they're willing to answer any questions and give you all kinds of encouragement. Pinterest has a ton of great recipes, and but just, you know, a lot of it's trial and error too. You know, just finding what works for you and be patient. To be patient. That's what
You know,
I
it's funny
say.
that you say that, Dana, and Craig, thank you for asking her that, because I'm reminded of what a guest on our show, you know, Gwen Wild, made the point. She's like, what she really works in her occupational therapy, if I remember correctly, Craig, you correct me if I'm wrong, she just wants people to really pay attention to your body. Like before and then during and then after, even if that's a workout or if that's a talk therapy session, or if that's a prayer or a meditation, or dare I say, Craig, one of your cold baths, oh dear God. Before you do something, let's really pay attention to what am I experiencing. Don't assume that's what everyone else experiences. Become aware of anxiety and become aware of depression and what that is. And then as you're doing something, changing a little something in your diet, be aware of what you feel like. And then after that, I think that's key.
Yeah, Dana, there's a story in Think and Grow Rich about a guy who bought a plot of land. He was digging for gold. This is back when the gold rush was going on. And apparently he got frustrated and stopped 3 feet from the mother lode. He sold the land, sold his equipment, and the guy that came in behind him and got filthy rich. How long before you started noticing a difference after being on the low carb diet?
Well, it's funny because when I first started keto in May or beginning of June, I was ready to give up. In fact, I told Jim I'm done because I was having that tired keto flu. It was hard. But I thought, okay, I'm just going to do it for the rest of this week. And then by that weekend, that's when I started to notice, oh my gosh, I'm thinking clearer. I'm not tired. Wait a minute. I think I'm feeling joy. So I would say it probably took me 10 days.
Okay.
When I started before, but yeah.
And I'm glad you said that too. What I heard you just say is, you know, you were trying to use this tool and manage stuff, but you almost gave up.
I almost gave up.
Wow.
I almost gave up.
Right.
And I would have been like the man with the mother load.
I know, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And some, yeah, that's.
But I pushed it, and a lot of it is because, and the subreddit it's on Reddit, it's keto, just straight out keto. But because of their support, and I saw people struggling, and all the response was just keep with it. It's gonna, this is temporary. And so I'm so glad that I did keep with it.
Good. So this is still sort of short term with you too. Now we're 3 months in or whatnot.
Right. Yep.
I mean, the main point I'm getting tonight that I really wanted to drive home is this sort of amazing switch that you described. It shocked me when we talked about it. Like I said before,
Right.
I want to ask you, I want to follow up with this. If you're willing, let's do this again. And it won't be just 3 months, or we'll just check on what happened at some point. Would you be interested in that?
Absolutely.
A year from
I'm
now,
already
even.
planning. Yeah. I'm already getting my recipes together for Thanksgiving and Christmas because
Cool.
I'm determined to stay on this.
Because what's your future plans with this? I mean, are you
I want to continue, but I plan on kind of modifying, going between paleo and keto, because I want to eat healthy. I want to be healthy. And, there's also studies that I've heard. I mean, I don't know. Right now it might just be anecdotal, but that keto helps prevent cancer, all that. So I'm looking long term to help. I want to stay low carb.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've heard some stuff too, and I don't want to try to quote anything about that. But I did read in one of Tim Ferriss's books that there are doctors who say that doing chemo while on chemotherapy seems to increase the chances the chemo works.
Now you doing keto on chemo therapy.
Yeah,
right.
Keto
on chemo.
Keto on chemo. That's what I heard too.
Cancer patients who were going through chemo, the cancer patients who either, I'm not sure if they started a keto diet or already on it, but they seem to respond better to the chemotherapy than the patients that were not. They were just eating the regular food.
Well, listen, I got faith in our scientists and our scientific community. I've said on the show, man, I love researchers. I'm so grateful for them because we're learning. I mean, understand, guys in the listening audience, from my dumb brain on this, like we've only been dealing with this in our societies around the world for a very short existence of our human race. Like whatever 100 years or so. So I really have faith in the scientific community to learn about this, to study it, to experiment a little bit, to play like you're going to do the paleo and the keto. I mean, there's a lot of really, really, really smart people out there. And so I don't want conspiracy theories being fearful about this. I want us, as we're doing on the show, to talk about it, to raise awareness about it. Yeah, experiment a little bit with it. Try a new tool. You can do psychotropic medications. You can do exercise. You can do nutrition. You can do a therapy experience. We're really, really trying to find as many tools to manage mental health and substance abuse.
Right, because this, what worked for me might not work for someone. And so I would hate for anybody to think that I'm saying this is the only way to help manage depression and anxiety. I would never want anyone to think that I said that.
But is it a dynamically interesting thing that you talked about here?
It is. And we talked about talking to your doctor before you started any kind of diet, and that's good advice, and you should do that. But really, it's whole foods, right? I mean, it's not anything off the charts that I would think would do anything bad to the body.
I'm doing better.
You're talking about vegetables and meat and
natural things. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm doing better with my McDonald's stuff, man. I love wheat bread. I love the type of bread that you can get that has all the nuts on it and everything.
Oh,
it's great. And fish, salmon is awesome. Like, I don't want people to think I have the horriblest diet out there, man. I've been feeling a little bit bad about myself.
I don't think the keto Big Mac's in the future there.
No, probably not. But listen, come on, I'm doing all right. I do a little better. I love salads. I eat carrots. It's awesome. Craig, why don't you try to take us out of here, man? And Dana, is there anything that you'd like to add or to summarize? And
if anybody wants any more information, I'm not an expert, but if they want to email me, or I'd be more than happy to help, or just to provide encouragement. I don't know if I can give out my email address. Is that okay?
You can do what you want to do, ma'am. Absolutely. You can coach them up and be in direct contact. Absolutely.
Sure, it's D Fatic. So D as in David, D as in David, F as in Frank, ATIC @gmail.com. And I would, if anybody needs encouragement or just wants someone to talk to or whatever, I'm here, and I would love to hear from anybody. So anything that I can do to help.
Thank you for that, Dana. That's awesome, man. If you are listening and you're suffering from depression and need somebody, reach out to Dana or somebody. Do something.
Dana, I would like to really express, we started a little bit of a tradition on here. You're not in the room, so I can't do the high five deal. Maybe we can kind of slap our hands together in that regard. Because listen, guys, this takes incredible courage to come on a show, talk about your personal experience and how that's worked for you. And Dana, it's just an absolutely amazing gift that you've given to everybody really around the world that is able to hear this. I think it's courageous. I'm honored to have had this conversation with you. I'm very grateful for it. You're awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me, because I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
So here's our high five with the hands here. I like it. Greg, you any summaries, or you got any thoughts, or take us out of here?
I just wanted to thank Dana too. That was awesome. I didn't know some of the things you told us tonight, so I appreciate you being vulnerable with us and our audience and coming on and telling us about your experience. Appreciate that.
Well, I know y'all are adopted brothers to my husband, so Y'all are brother-in-laws to me.
That's awesome. I appreciate that.
Love it. Yeah, folks, if you want to find out more about the show, throughitherapisteyes.com. We have links to our Facebook and Instagram out there. We also have individual entries for each show. You can stream right from the website, or you can find us on just about any podcast platform. If you are listening and enjoying the content, we'd appreciate a 5-star review. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe. You can also sign up for our mailing list. And
don't forget to the audience real quick. I think it was last week, the show that released. I looked for people to give direct contact or to my email at contact@throughitherapisteyes.com. I'm going to respond, personally to the first 10 or so, maybe more, with just kind of a cool conversation. And I'd like to reach out. Yeah. Well, the show hadn't been released.
Well, by the time they hear this,
right. Yeah. It's hard to play that. Right.
Yeah,
right.
That's right. And also, too, man, I went out the other day and gave some of my favorite podcasts 5 stars. So it's
actually,
easy to do.
I'm learning about podcasts as well, and I've signed Through Therapist Eyes up on a thing, and yeah, please know that makes a big difference. People that make comments like that comes up on a service thing and makes a big difference in your ratings and stuff.
Yeah, it also helps us get found. If people rate us,
it's a big deal,
and people give us ratings and feedback. Then when somebody goes into Apple and searches mental health, then we're more likely to show up at the top.
It makes a big impact, yeah.
It does. What are we going to do next time, man?
I was going to ask you, man, because I have no idea.
Well, it'll just be a surprise to everybody.
We're going to have to figure it out. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a great week.